Haven't we all experienced a very hot day and switched on the fan or the AC, or suddenly start blinking our eyes when some dirt enters in our eyes? Or any other example like we quickly pull down our hand away when we mistakenly touch any hot object? Well, what exactly is happening in these situations? Basically, we feel or sense something happening to us, and we respond to these changes appropriately. But how much time do we think we take to respond? Maybe hardly even 2 seconds or even lesser than that. But you will be amazed to know that a lot of things happen in our body in this short span of time. And all of this happens due to something called nervous tissues. And we will be talking about the same today. So, nervous tissue is a tissue which is specialized to transmit message in our body. It is present in brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Nervous tissues contain the specialized cells called nerve cell or neuron. The neurons are specialized for conduction of nerve impulses or signals. They receive stimuli from within or outside the body and conduct impulses or these signals which travel from one neuron to another neuron. These things can be well understood when we are going to study about the structure and the function of the neuron. Neuron. The neuron is composed of the three parts. Here we have a diagram of the neuron. Let us study about the different parts of the neuron. First is the cell body. These are the dendrites and this is the axon and these are the nerve terminals. Here, this is the cell body of a neuron. We can observe a nucleus in the cell body. So, the cell body has a nucleus and we can also observe some branches that are arising from the cell body. These branches, like structures, are called as dendrites. Here we find long fiber extending from the cell body. This long fiber is called axon, and at the end of the axon we will find some small branches called as nerve endings. So the tips of an axon are called as nerve endings, nerve terminals, and axon terminals. So now let us see the working of the neuron. What is its role? What is its function? How do these nerve cells help us? Nerve cells help us in transmission of information from one part of the body to the other part of the body. Let us understand this by the help of an example. We see an object with our eyes. The visual information of the object is carried to our brain to recognize that object. Then how the information is carried from eye to the brain? That is done by the nerve cells. The dendrites of the neuron receive the information. The axon passes the information to the neuron. When the dendrites of a neuron receives the information, they start a chemical reaction that generates electrical impulse. This electrical impulse travels from the dendrite to the cell body and then along the axon and finally reaches the nerve endings. The nerve endings are not directly connected to one another neuron because there is some gap between one nerve cell and the other nerve cell. So this gap or this junction is called as the synapse. Here's the question. If a neuron are not connected to one another, then how the electrical impulse is passed from one neuron to another? Let's see. At the ending of the axon, that is at the nerve ending, the electrical impulse triggers the release of some chemicals. That means the electrical impulse is converted into the chemical. These chemicals reach the gap, that is dendrite of the next neuron. So there they create a similar reaction and converts back to the electrical impulse. When this electrical impulse reach the dendrite of the neuron, there is similar electrical impulse created. The electrical impulse pass from dendrite to axon again and again travel throughout the axon finally to the nerve endings. Finally, at the nerve ending, the neuron is connected to the target cells. Target cells can be either muscles, glands, etc. So at the end of the neuron, these are connected to target cell by the synapse. This is how the nerve impulse travels along the